Oh boy, disclaimer.
Hello Banterson, everyone here. Well, I've covered both Scream 1 and 2 on this little journey to see who killed who in the Scream franchise, so now it's time to tackle Scream 4. Not Scream 3 because Roman was the sole killer of that film. I mean, with only one killer, it's kind of obvious who killed who, considering Roman killed everyone, so it would be pointless and rubbish. So we're going to gloss over that and get into Scream 4. Scream 4 was the first Scream movie released in 11 years, and decided to capitalise on that fact by being slightly different to the previous two sequels. Unlike Scream 2 and 3, Scream 4 went for more of a remake approach, simultaneously continuing the story from the previous films, whilst also restarting the franchise for new, younger viewers. Much like the first Scream film, it also did a great job in parodying its source material, in this case remakes, referring to the metas and tropes that you would expect to see in those movies in a self-aware manner.
Working on less of a shriekwell and more of a screamake.
Copyrighted terms, by the way.
Because all there are now are remakes.
So why are you so sure that the killer's working by the rules of a horror remake?
Gotta figure it out yet, Sydney? Keeping with the remake theme, Trevor's this generation's Billy Loomis.
However, it also had its fair share of twists and turns along the way. Throughout the entire film, the audience is made to believe that Jill, Sydney's young cousin, is the new Sydney of the franchise, only to throw a huge spanner in the works and have her revealed as one of the two killers in the film. Joining her was Charlie. Who the hell is Charlie? Well, he's the new Randy, only with none of the personality or likeable traits. Their motives were pretty meh, with Jill wanting fame and Charlie wanting pussy. No, seriously, that's his motive.
4 years of classes together and you notice me now? Stupid bitch!
He's a simp. Woo. It certainly was a ballsy move and a hell of a twist having Jill as the killer, though it was pretty obvious Charlie was going to be one of the villains. Just look at him, he looks like he would shoot up a school in 5 minutes. They did however make for an interesting duo and racked up some great kills in this movie. But who killed who? Well, let's get into the grit and find out. Well, this is a bit of a tough one to start with because one of these two dies off screen. Marnie and Jenny are seen watching Stab 7 when Jenny goes to investigate a strange noise. Very cliche, I know. However, it turns out she's just trying to prank Marnie, calling her and using the Ghostface Killer voice app. Who the hell would make an app based on that? That's like making an app based around recipes made by Jeffrey Dahmer. Whilst Jenny laughs on the phone, we hear Marnie get brutally murdered. Ghostface then calls and taunts Jenny before throwing Marnie's body through a window. Ghostface then chases Jenny through the house, stabbing her, and then using the garage door to crush her before finally finishing the job. First of all, both Jill and Charlie are there. I say this because during the film's climax, Charlie shows Sydney footage of Marnie's death, and you can clearly see someone is holding the camera filming Ghostface killing her. I think Charlie killed Marnie simply to prove himself to Jill. What better way to make sure Charlie doesn't wuss out than by making him prove himself by claiming the first victim. I believe Jill to be the caller because when Jenny answers the phone, she asks if it's Trevor on the line. We later find out that Trevor is Jill's ex-boyfriend who cheated on her. Jenny, automatically assuming Trevor is on the phone, tells me that Jenny is the girl he cheated on Jill with, and let's just say Ghostface has some pretty mean things to say about Jenny over the phone.
You're the dumb blonde with the big tits. We'll have some fun with you before you die.
Just listen to that. Doesn't it sound like a bitter ex-girlfriend to you? Because of this, I also believe Jill is the one to kill Jenny. Now that Charlie has proved himself, Jill wouldn't mind getting her hands dirty, especially when getting revenge on the girl who stole her boyfriend. When Marnie was thrown through the window, it would have given Jill a few seconds to hang up the phone before appearing at the window. The following morning, Jill and her friend Olivia get picked up for school by their friend Kirby. In the car, Jill receives a call from Ghostface on Jenny's phone, which she doesn't take seriously and hangs up. Olivia then says she got a similar call from Marnie's phone. These calls were obviously made by Charlie. First off, Jill clearly isn't ringing herself here. That would be stupid. So Charlie obviously made this call and therefore most likely made the call to Olivia as well. Meanwhile, a now grown-up Sydney is revisiting Woodsboro to promote her new book about the Ghostface killing. Things are going well until Dewey and his squad turn up after one of the girls' missing phone is traced back to the bookstore's coordinates. After dialing the phone's number, they hear its ring coming from the trunk of Sydney's rental car, and when opening said trunk they find the phone, some blood, and a knife planted there by one of the killers. For me, this has to be Charlie. Like I said, he was the one who made the calls to Jill and Olivia using Jenny and Marnie's phones. It doesn't take much detective work to realise he could could easily dispose of one of the phones in Sydney's trunk once he had made the calls. Also, Charlie's whereabouts are unknown at this point. Meanwhile, Jill was clearly seen being taken to school by Kirby, so this has to be Charlie's handiwork. That night, Kirby and Jill are in Jill's house watching Shaun of the Dead. Jill calls Olivia, attempting to prank her before Ghostface calls Kirby. After some back and forth, Ghostface jumps out of Olivia's closet and brutally murders her. Like, Jesus Christ, look at this! Look at the amount of blood splatter! I don't even think I can show you this out of risk of having my video taken down. Charlie is clearly the caller and the killer because, well, we can see Jill. She's definitely not the killer here. This has been pretty easy so far. After hearing the commotion, Sydney rushes over to Olivia's house, but sadly it's too late. She then receives a call from Ghostface, who then appears and attacks Jill, though Sydney is able to overpower them. The attacker is once again Charlie, because much like last time, we can see Jill. However, I think Jill is the caller this time. Not only does Ghostface hang up the phone the split second before Jill calls up the stairs for Sydney, but just listen to what Ghostface says here.
Why don't you come for me? You got the balls for that?
Oh, poor Sydney. You think this is all about you? You think you're still the star? Spare me the lecture. You've done very well by all this bloodshed, haven't you? Well, how about the town you left behind?
I feel that Ghostface sounds more like Jill here, jealous of Sydney's success and fame that she desperately craves, so I'm going to say that Jill was the caller. After the attack, Sydney and Jill go to the hospital to get checked. Whilst there, Sydney fires her publicist Rebecca after finding out she cares more about making money than the lives of others. As Rebecca leaves, she gets stalked by Ghostface before being murdered and then thrown off the parking garage onto a news van. Hey, when in doubt, throw him off a building, right? For me, this has to be Jill's doing. Not only is she in the hospital, meaning she has the opportunity to do so, but Charlie is seen arriving at the press conference outside the hospital with Robbie. Now I know you can't actually see Charlie, or Robbie for that matter, when Rebecca is thrown off the building, but it still makes more sense for Jill to be the culprit here. Remember, she's in the hospital the parking garage is attached to, so it would be easier for her to follow Rebecca there. Charlie would have to enter the hospital and go up to the correct floor, whilst also not knowing exactly when Rebecca left. Charlie would also struggle to get away from Robbie without arousing suspicion. So yeah, it's Jill's kill. Later in the film, Gail, who is attempting to go rogue and solve who is behind the killings herself, follows the teens to the annual Stab-a-thon. What is a Stab-a-thon? It's an underground, invite-only party where students get drunk and watch all 7 Stab movies back to back. Gail sets up several cameras to record the action and see if she can find out any information, only for all her cameras to be turned off. Upon re-entering the party to sort her cameras out, she gets distracted by a webcam that isn't hers and then gets attacked by Ghostface, being stabbed in the shoulder. Ouch. This has to be Charlie, as he's the one there. Jill at this point was under a strict lockdown, whilst Charlie, along with Robbie, organised the Stab-a-thon. Considering everyone there is busy watching the film, it would be easy for him to sneak off and get into the costume undetected. Another easy one for the books. Well, it had to get difficult eventually, didn't it? Hoss and Perkins, 2 of Woodsborough's finest, are outside Jill's house and responsible for making perimeters around the neighbourhood and keeping her safe. Unfortunately for them, after Hoss returns from his latest perimeter, he gets stabbed in the back before Perkins gets stabbed in the head for his troubles. He then gets out of his car and staggers around like a drunk trying to fight a hobo for a half-eaten burger. The easy answer is that Jill's the killer, right? She would have just snuck out of the house and Charlie was just seen at the Stab-a-thon. However, this scene could have taken place later that night, giving Charlie a chance to sneak back to Jill's house among all the chaos surrounding Gail's attack. Later on in the film, Charlie gives Jill the cop's gun, saying, "I'm sure those cops would want you to have this, Jill, for your protection," implying that he took one of the dead officer's guns. This means that he would have had to have at least been there. So it's safe to assume that this scene happens around 20 to 30 minutes after the previous one. Now we know the time, we need to know the opportunity. Jill certainly has more opportunity here as, like I mentioned earlier, she could easily just sneak out of the house and blitz attack them. She would also know their routine really well after seeing them so frequently. Now I'm going to skip ahead slightly to when Kate, Jill's mother, arrives at the house with groceries after Perkins and Hoss have been killed. She says that the cops were outside when she got there, but in the time it took her to bring the first bags of groceries inside and then go back to the car to get the remaining bag, they had gone. There is definitely not enough time here for this murder to have taken place, so it's safe to assume the cops were already dead by the time Kate returned to the house. Even later in the film, Deputy Hicks tells Dewey over the phone that Perkins and Hoss were found dead in their car 2 blocks away with multiple stab wounds, which is odd considering we clearly see them both only get stabbed once. With all this information, I think I know how this panned out. Jill, knowing the officer's routine, probably snuck out of the house after the previous perimeter was covered. This would have given her enough time to sneak away from the house and to the other side of the road. Then, when Hoss returned from his perimeter search, she blitz attacked both of them, killing them. Charlie then appeared shortly after and helped to stuff them both into the cop car. Upon seeing Kate returning, both of them hid and waited for her to go inside, after which Charlie then drove the cop car 2 blocks away, dumping it and stabbing the cops a few more times to ensure they were dead, before making his way back on foot. Jill meanwhile hid in the shadows before... Going back to where I skipped to earlier, after Kate goes back to the car to get the remaining bag of groceries, Sydney answers the house phone and gets tormented by Ghostface. This was most likely Jill, as Charlie would have been busy disposing of the cop car and making his way back to the house. Why would he be making his way back to the house? Well... After talking to Ghostface, Sydney realises that Jill has snuck out. Upon warning Kate, they attempt to go to Kirby's to find her, only for Ghostface to stop them. Upon fending Ghostface off, Kate gets stabbed in the back through the letterbox of the front door, killing her. A lot of people think this was Jill, claiming that she took credit for it, though she never actually said she specifically killed her. In fact, she actually said,
I mean, for fuck's sake, my own mother had to die. No great loss there, so I could stay true to the original.
That's not exactly a confession, is it? Also, there are clearly 2 ghost faces in this scene. Think about it, Sydney and Kate attempted to escape through the back door, only to run back inside upon seeing Ghostface. They then ran to the front door and boom, there's Ghostface. There is no way in hell that the Ghostface from the back of the house could make it to the front of the house in such a small amount of time. So clearly, both were there. And honestly, I think Charlie did this one. Like I said, Jill never specifically said she killed her mother, though I feel this is something that she would own up to if she had done so. Also, Jill is a very small high school teenager, so I doubt it would take 2 full-grown women this much effort to overpower her. Charlie, meanwhile, might have been a bit tougher to force out of the door, so I'm gonna go with Charlie here. At Kirby's house, Trevor appears out of nowhere and claims Jill invited him via text. She goes to look for her phone to prove she didn't text him. Later on, he is seen searching for her, and during the film's climax he is seen bound and gagged in the downstairs closet. I think it's pretty obvious Jill is responsible here. Not only had Charlie just stormed off after being cock-blocked by Trevor, but Trevor was desperate to get back together with Sydney. It wouldn't take much effort for her to seduce him and then subdue him. Though I have to admit, I have no idea how she managed to carry his ass downstairs and shove him in the closet, as there wasn't really enough time for her, or Charlie now that I think about it, to do so. I guess it's just one of those things we have to accept despite it logically not being possible. Robbie, meanwhile, is wandering around outside completely wasted. Thankfully for him, Ghostface is there to sober him up by stabbing the shit out of him. This is definitely Charlie for 2 reasons. One, he basically admits it later on, saying, I got great footage of my Robbie kill, essentially taking credit for the murder. And the second reason is actually thanks to Robbie being an idiot. Earlier in the film we see both Charlie and Robbie in film club telling Gail and Sydney that the only guaranteed way to survive a horror film is to be gay. Well, when Robbie is getting stabbed by Ghostface, he says that he is gay in a final desperate attempt to save his life, and Ghostface actually stops stabbing him and ponders for a moment. If this was Jill, she would have just kept stabbing him because she didn't know about this rule, but Charlie did know about it. In fact, it was him who said it in film club. When I first watched this film, it was actually this scene that made me realise that Charlie was one of the killers. Shortly afterwards, Sydney arrives at the house in an attempt to rescue Jill, only for Ghostface to appear and chase them both upstairs. Jill hides under the bed while Sydney climbs out of the window and gets Ghostface to chase her across the roof, only for Ghostface to go back through the window. Charlie is obviously wearing a costume here because, once again, Jill is on screen. Now, I'm not saying Kirby died here because we didn't actually see her die, so I'm calling this an attack for now. In this scene, Kirby and Sydney are in the house when Charlie turns up at the door covered in blood. Kirby and Sydney don't trust him, so they refuse to let him in, leading to him being bound and gagged outside. Ghostface then calls Kirby and puts her through a movie trivia quiz, much like Billy and Stu did to Casey in the first film. Kirby seems to answer the questions right because Ghostface appears to leave Charlie alone, allowing Kirby to go outside and untie him. Then he stabs her as a token of appreciation. What a nice lad. Obviously Jill is the caller in this scene because Charlie is bound and gagged to a chair. And obviously Charlie is the attacker in this scene because, well, we see him do it. I decided to group these two together because they're both a given for the same reason. After revealing herself as one of the killers, Jill shoots Trevor in the dick, ouch that's gotta hurt, and then in the head, killing him. She then tricks Charlie into thinking they're going to stage being stabbed, only to betray him and stab him in the heart instead. What a cold bitch. So that's how I think it all happened in Scream 4. By my logic, Jill killed Jenny, Rebecca, Hoss, Perkins, Trevor, and Charlie, giving her a total of 6 kills. Charlie meanwhile had fun slaying Marnie, Olivia, Kate, Robbie, and maybe Kirby, giving him a kill count of 4 or 5 depending. Overall, I really liked Jill as a villain. Not only was it a nice twist and a ballsy move, but I also love how psychotic she was. The whole did it for fame trope has been done many times before, but Jill took it to a whole new level. The scene where she slowly but surely injures herself to fake being attacked is creepy as all hell and quite sickening. Seeing her feed off of fame and her willingness to do anything to get said fame really does make her stand out as a villain. Shame the same thing can't be said for Wet Rag Charlie. It's a shame because behind the mask Charlie was awesome with some really interesting kills to his name, but outside of it he's just a bland, boring simp. Charlie just doesn't do it for me as a villain. Ah well. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. Do you agree with my conclusions? How do you think it went down? Let me know down below. I've been Banterson, and I'll see you soon.